Right, good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us on another Friday adding audio to a video world presentation. My name is Mark. I'm the Director of Sales here at Pulse 8, and I'm going to be taking you through this morning's presentation. Before we do, I thought it was wise, just for those of you who don't know us, just to give you a 5-minute overview of our company. The picture in front of you is our corporate HQ down in Poole in Dorset in the south of England. Under normal circumstances, that building has 40+ employees. It houses our production facility, our R&D, our sales, our marketing, our accounts and management offices. Established back in 2010, and it's a hub of activity under normal circumstances. As I mentioned, it's in the UK, and being in the UK is something that we're quite proud of. So many of our fellow manufacturers in our field are utilising factories on far-flung corners of the world. We're quite passionate about keeping all of our own manufacturing in-house. It gives us the ability to micromanage our products and testing to deliver the best possible products out to you. And that kind of starts with our R&D team. There's some shots from our R&D department. Despite being a messy bunch, they are very productive. They are in charge of all of our schematics, our layouts, our hardware and software. And they do some great things again in that building in England. Once those guys have done their things, their designs and final designs head downstairs to our production facility. And there's a few shots from our production floor there. On the left-hand side, our new, very expensive laser cutting, folding, bending machine that we brought online in the autumn of 2019. It enables us to be completely self-sufficient. In years gone by, we were outsourcing our metalwork, for example, that wrap all of our bespoke circuit boards. Now we've brought that unit online, we're 100% self-sufficient, and we can make some cost savings. And for those of you who've been with us for a little bit of time, you'll have realized that last September when we reduced all of our pricing thanks to that little multi-million-pound machine there. From there, we go into, there's a shot of one of our pick and place machines there. This is picking and placing hundreds of components an hour onto our own custom designed circuit boards. And on the right-hand side, you can see some finished products, and those are a bunch of our 4x4 matrix, video matrices. So we're here to talk about audio. And whether you're new to Pulse 8 or new to audio, or maybe new to custom install, I know that the current climate has brought a lot of new trades into our industry. I thought it would be wise for a few moments just to talk about distributed audio before we look at our products. And first of all, we look at how we distribute audio and how the industry distributes audio. And there are two main ways. Hardwired, which is a traditional solution. We've been doing it for decades now, often called star-wired. And it's a way of sending our video and audio content from a central location in a property, often called the rack, around a cabled infrastructure to in wall, in ceiling, or other speakers around the property. Pretty simple, pretty easy. From there, in more recent years, we introduced wireless, and wireless audio and video distribution relies on Wi-Fi or alternative wireless transmission protocols to send audio to a location. There are pros and cons of both, and we're going to look at those before we look at the way Pulse 8 work. If we start looking at wireless, and we take this is a little apartment, 3-bedroom apartment, here is our little example. And you can't really talk about wireless without acknowledging some of the big players. Sonos, I'm going to use Sonos as everybody knows it, it's going to be my example, but I have no bone to pick with Sonos. I think they're great, but I could equally be saying Denon Hias, I could say Yamaha Music Cast, I could say Bose Sound Dock, I could even talk about little Alexa boxes that play music around house and other virtual assistants with speakers. I'm not picking on Sonos, but it's just an easy example. So if we take a wireless environment with Sonos here, and in this example, I'm using the Sonos Play Ones, little $150 portable Wi-Fi boxes, but typically you can only use those solutions in their same family of products. So if I wanted to introduce other solutions to it, or other speakers or other amplifiers, it's going to be slightly problematic if I step outside the Sonos or other family of products. Because they're using networking equipment, they are known to flood network traffic. Now, Pulse 8 don't make any networking equipment. We have no skin in this particular game, but I will urge you, if you're installing AV equipment in a customer's home, to make sure you manage and install decent networking equipment. There are plenty of manufacturers and distributors out there that can advise you on the right wireless and wired networking hardware to support the needs of products. Do not rely on the cheap or free plastic router box that came from the ISP and expect that to deliver all of your Ethernet for all of your home and networking and computer needs, as well as all of your wireless video and audio needs. It just won't do it. And the first thing that when the internet goes down or a signal becomes degraded is the client calls you and you've got to fix it. But you're not BT, you're not Virgin Media or Sky, you're just not relying on their product. So I urge you to go check out Cedia or any of the distributors out there, and they can teach you some great things about networking. So moving on, audio quality, something that I hold dear to my heart, and I'm looking down the list of people who have joined us this morning, and I can see a few names that I know. Like me, those names have been around for a while, and they'll remember a time before we had MP3, before we had streaming services. We used to have something called high fidelity audio. Yes, I appreciate there are services like Tidal out there and Apple Lossless that do stream high quality, seemingly uncompressed audio. But if you want good quality, do not rely on cheap MP3 downloads and streaming services. And of course, when it comes to that hardware, you've got to look at the products you're installing. If you've got a single box in a corner that's pumping out all of the sound from one speaker, is that truly going to be as good as a pair of stereo speakers with decent stereo separation? I very much doubt it. So, talking of those boxes, many of them, of course, when we want to provide audio around a home in a wireless environment, we have to put a box and a power supply in every room. Of course, that has some drawbacks. You can really only put the boxes where there are power supplies, unless you're rewiring, of course. And it often gives us more opportunity for failure. So let's quickly look at the pros and cons of both before we look at how we play. So, of course, wireless audio is low cost. Great, it's easy, it's cheap. But of course, low cost equals low margin. And you guys are here to make money as well as make your customers happy, I assume. It's easy to install. I know that most of these products promote a very simple, easy to install out of the box option. Of course, then a customer doesn't need you. You know, I don't need to pay an installer or you guys a labor charge and a service charge to come and install my Sonos when I can watch a 3-minute video on YouTube. So just something to think on. Easy wireless installation. Of course, you can throw a box anywhere you need, and I touched on it already. But signal distance and quality is always dependent on the architecture of the residence. If you're in a modern home, it's stud walling and standard plasterboard, you're probably going to be all right with a bit of Wi-Fi. But if your property is like my home, maybe 100 years old, brick and stone, try sending audio across a property with all of those parameters. You're going to struggle. Simple to use from an app. Everybody has them, as do we for our video products. But of course, those of you out there who work with control systems will be selling control systems. The clients don't need your control systems if I can download a free app. Of course, there are pros and cons of apps. I'm not going to talk about them in detail, but typically if you've got half a dozen products and half a dozen apps, the client's going to be app jumping all day long on their phone to control their house versus one central control point. All in one single box solution. So I've already touched on them. The audio quality is, and I don't care how good the Bose Soundwave is these days, or the Bang & Olufsen's fabulous solutions that they have out there, there is no compromise for decent stereo sound. And lastly, and most importantly, these things are available online. Great. Your customers can get your quote, Google the hell out of it, and of course, go compete with you. So anyone trying to compete with online resellers is ultimately in a race to the bottom and eroding your margin. So let's look at a different solution. Why sell a hardwired audio system? First and foremost, you guys get the opportunity to pull cable. And cable makes you money. There's money and there's margin in the physical cable, and there's margin in the labor. You get to sell speakers, and speakers make good margin and labor, good product margin. I don't sell speakers, but I have done many for many years. There are probably not many categories in the AV world that make better margin than loudspeakers these days. And if you're not installing speakers and you are installing those cheap plastic Wi-Fi boxes, you're doing yourself a disservice. Less boxes, less power supplies, less that can go wrong. Passive speaker in a room connected over a speaker cable to an amplifier is a lot less likely to go down than a box with an AC power supply that's connected to Wi-Fi. Superior quality and reliability, I've talked on it already. That is the biggest plus point for me from a wireless solution. I can run decent quality speaker cable to decent quality cables and deliver decent quality audio. And of course, our wired audio solutions are complementary to all of our video solutions. For those of you who joined us on Monday and Wednesday this week, you'd have looked at our full product range on Monday. We'd have gone deep dive into our HD-based video distribution products on Wednesday. All of those products that you've seen this week already are complementary to our audio. If you haven't seen those sessions, we rerun them on Monday and next week, Wednesday. High quality audio installations, real important. For those of you who are in populated cities and you've got many installers in your neighborhood, potentially quoting the same clients on the same projects, you will set yourself apart if you can demonstrate to your client that you're offering a far superior solution. And of course, you will open doors for yourself and for future products doing that. And lastly, and this is a big thing for me, when quoting a project for audio, it comes down to rooms. When the client looks at a final quote, and if they need to save money, they look at room cost, and they look at rooms that are or are not important. And I don't care which wireless solution you use, once you factor in the hardware for the audio, the hardware for the networking, and all of the proprietary products you need to get that audio there, it will always be more expensive compared to a wired audio solution with a speaker and a speaker cable. So let's look at our property again, and let's look at it in a wired solution. Remember, this wired solution is going to the rack, and in that rack, we've suddenly got more access to more sources. Yes, of course, with the wireless solutions, we had the Spotify, the Tidal, the Apple Music, or the Sonos services, or whoever it may be. But of course, because our hardware lives in our rack, we've now got access to all of our video solutions, and all of those satellite cable, Freeview boxes, Blu-ray players all have audio capabilities for online music and radio and so on and so on. So you have access to all the sources in the home in all of the zones. Now from those sources, we jump into a preamplifier. And in our case, this is our clever brains of the operation. For my example, I'm using our new ProAudio 16. This takes all of our sources, does all of our switching, does all of our sound correction. And I'll talk about that in a moment. But this product is controlled by an automation partner. There's a whole bunch of them there. Little note to add, as a result of the benefits of COVID-19, shall we call it, I had the opportunity to sit on someone else's webinar for a change, and I had the pleasure of joining a team at Luxome a few weeks ago. And I liked what I saw. We spoke to the owners of the property, and in their next software revision, we'll have all of the Pulse 8 Pro audio and video solutions in the Luxome ecostructure. So as well as Control4, Crestron, Elan, RTI, Savant, URC, and Vantage, we've now added Luxome to our family of partners. So from our preamplifier, we of course have to go into power amplifiers. And those power amplifiers I'm using in this example are our own new ProAmp 8s, which I'm going to talk about shortly. But if we look at those amplifiers and that preamplifier in situ of our property, first of all, we can install a whole bunch more speakers in positions that your clients need them. Now, if we look at our property and we look at if we remember back to the half a dozen Sonos boxes we had in the previous example, we've now got speakers in positions that are suited to the client, I'm sorry. And those are architecturally specific speakers. So if you look at, for example, our lounge dining room that I'm highlighting there, this is a kitchen lounge diner. In the top of that drawing, I've got a 5.1 configuration, and I could put directional speakers in that environment. If I look at the hallway, I've got maybe single stereo solutions. While I'm grouping them, it's worth pointing out, all of these little wireless solutions offer zone grouping or party modes or whatever they call it these days, as do we within our zone linking feature. So if, for example, in this scenario, I've got my lounge 5.1 area and my kitchen and my hall in quite close proximity, the likelihood of me wanting to listen to something different in each of those rooms, each of those zones, I'm sorry, is quite remote. So as a temporary or permanent basis, I can group those zones. And within the ProAudio family of products, you can do that 3 times over. So if we look at the top there, I've got a little ensuite, a bedroom with a pair of speakers and an ensuite bathroom with a single stereo. I'm not going to jump out of bed in the morning and then run into the shower and put something else on. I'm just going to carry on listening to the radio. And with our system, we can do this 3 times over. So quite flexible. Now, depending on your programming and depending on your chosen control system, we can group those zones as a temporary or permanent basis. So let's look at the ProAudio preamp family in a bit more detail. This is the largest selection of world-class DSP preamps available. Nobody else makes a range as wide and as vast as us with as much DSP attenuation. So what we're going to do is look at some key features first of all, and this is the key features across our entire range. I'll look at the individual models shortly, but just to kind of speed things along, as it were, these are the universal functions across our entire range. So of course, we start with the easy stuff, the client-friendly volume, balance, bass, and treble, the EQ, if you like. The same stuff that your car manufacturer put in your car, the stuff you can tweak and think you make it sound a bit better. You're not doing any harm to the room, you're not doing any harm to anything, you're just adjusting for personal taste. We give you your clients that feature. But more importantly, we give you, as an integrator, a full DSP to control analog and digital audio. Now, DSP, or digital signal processing, has two different unique capabilities. We've talked about those in a moment. But our DSP ranges are from plus 20 decibels to minus 20 decibels with 0.5 decibel increments. So that gives us 80 steps of attenuation. Why is that important? We're about to look. So it's a two-port DSP. So we can do two different main jobs with our DSP. Input DSP for source matching is number one. So for those of you who don't know, let me give you a good example of why we do source matching. If I took a $30 Amazon Fire cheapy stick and I took a $500 Sony Blu-ray player, those two products are made at completely different parameters. But most of those parameters, certainly in the Amazon example, are going to be cost related. So the audio output stage of that product is going to be far inferior to the $500 Blu-ray player. So when you plug those two sources into an amplifier and you play one, of course on the Amazon Fire Stick, you're not turning up the sound because it's not a particularly great output stage on that product. When you flick over to the Blu-ray player, you have to turn it down. And from your client's point of view, that's going to be an audible pain in the backside for flicking sources. You know what it's like. You've turned it right up because it's a crappy Freeview source or something like that. You've suddenly jumped over to the Blu-ray player and it's blaring out. So what we do is we level that input sound stage so to deliver a level field across all the inputs. Now, if you remember back to our rack design earlier, we had potentially, or depending on the ProAudio products, potentially 80 inputs. And of course, we can then match those all to one level playing field. And output DSP, the second biggest reason for DSP, for room correction. Now, for those of you who have gone on any home theatre courses or any form of room correction courses, there are lots and lots of different ways to improve the sound of a room. Yes, there are lots of physical products you can install these days, and there are plenty of manufacturers that will supply you acoustic panels or acoustic treatments. I've even seen acoustic paint these days, and jury's out in my mind on that one. But of course, the room correction that we do is actually in our amplifier. You know what it's like. You go and listen to a home cinema in a demo room or a showroom or even your own rooms. When you take that product, you install it somewhere else, it will always sound different, no matter if you've got identical hardware. And that big differentiating factor is the room itself. So with our DSP, we correct the output stage to suit the room. Let me give you an example. I'm standing in a room right now with a 5.1 surround sound system, and I've got 5 speakers in my ceiling. And on my left-hand front speaker is right by a big 6-foot glass wall. And the sound that comes out of that speaker is going to be hitting that glass, reflecting and producing a bright and lively sound, which may be great. But of course, when I compare that to the other side of my room where I've got a big couch and some curtains, that's suddenly getting this muffled, mixed up sound. So the sound coming out of both those speakers is completely different. If that was a stereo pair of speakers, I'd be driving myself crazy. So within the DSP, I can take each individual speaker and adjust and match them to suit the room. So moving on from there, we give you independent volume range of those speakers, and we call it gain control in a technical term. And we give you this plus 24 to minus 99 decibels, and again with the same 0.5 step attenuation and a full mute. And full mute is quite important. In the hustle and bustle of a day-to-day house, you're not going to notice if you've got full muting or not. But if it's 3 o'clock in the morning and there's a speaker above the client's bed and that zone is switched on, but no source is coming out, there is going to be an audible sound just because of the nature of the electricity running through the circuitry. Unless you've got full muting, you'll all notice from your AVRs or other amplifiers, 0 is not off. It usually runs into the minuses to be off, and that's full muting. We also give you master control. So not only do we give you independent channel control for each individual speaker in each individual zone, we give you master control to simultaneously move all of these volumes. So for example, in some of our bigger ProAudio products we're going to look at shortly, in a commercial setting, we did a project very recently in a hotel, and the hotel communal areas had the conventional reception, bar, restaurant, lounge area, but had different zones. And of course, the speaker and audio levels in those zones were set accordingly. But of course, at 11 o'clock at night, when the hotel starts to shut down and people go to sleep, we want to uniformly shut down the volume level, lower the volume across the entire property. So we can do that. Moving on, we give you lip sync. Obviously, what lip sync does, but it's from a 0 to 170 microseconds attenuation for making sure the picture matches the sound. Subwoofer control, real important. We give you high and low pass filters from 50 to 300 hertz. So I don't care what subwoofer you're using. I don't care where you're putting it in the room, as long as it's not the null in the room. You all know about that from your subwoofer placement trainings. We can adjust accordingly. And of course, the big thing with our products, their audio format conversion, digital inputs automatically converted to analog. And of course, analog and digital are both converted the opposite. And then finally, control. They're all controllable via RS-232 or IP from any of the control brands you care to mention. And of course, even our own proprietary Alexa skill can control our products too. So let's look at the products in a little bit more detail. I'm going to fly through these, but it starts with our ProAudio 8. This is our baby of the bunch. This is as the name suggests, an 8 input, 8 output, but it's split. So with our product, you'll notice at the top line there, we've got 8 analog, 8 digital coax, and 8 optical. So we have 24 choices. We can connect to all of those if we want, but of course we can only hear 8 of them. And then from an output point of view, we have 8 analog and 8 digital. With this product as well as all of our products, we give you doorbell functionality also. So moving on from there, as the name suggests, this is double of everything. This is a ProAudio 16, 48 choices, and that's 16 stereo, 16 digital coax, and 16 optical. Again, we keep the doorbell, but we give you 16 analog, 16 digital outs. Remember, all of that DSP stuff we just talked about is in all of these products. Moving on to the bigger boxes, the ProAudio 32, this gives you 80 choices, and that's split between 32 in, analog in, 32 digital coax in, and 16 optical inputs. We give you 2 doorbell options on this. We give you 32 analog outs and 32 digital outs. Remember, we're going analog to digital or digital to analog, we don't care. This is the first product that introduces our 12-volt triggers. So we have 12 12-volt triggers for those of you doing electronic drapes or blinds or projector mounts, drops, screens, whatever you need. We start to introduce our 12-volt solution. For those of you with smaller number of inputs but larger zones, we do the 1632, 40 options. That's split between 16 stereo, 16 digital, and 8 optical. And from an output, it's exactly the same as the previous product, 32 stereo, 32 digital, and 12 coaxial. And then finally, for our off-the-shelf solution, we offer this 3248. This is the last of our off-the-peg options. This is 80 input, and that's split 32 digital, 32 stereo, analog, sorry, 16 optical, 2 doorbells, 48 analog outputs, 48 digitals, 18 12 volts. So that's 5 preamps, more than any other company make, but that's not all we do. We make some bespoke solutions. We also do a 3264, 3296, and a 32128. They're custom built, but we specify them as you need them. So that's our preamp range. Now, of course, a preamp is no good without a power amp. And I'm real pleased to say, despite all of the world's problems, we launched a new product in February, our ProAmp. This was launched at ISC in February, and this is our ProAmp 8. This is a 16-channel, 8-zone power amplifier. This is 100 watts at 4 ohms and 50 watts at 8 ohms. This amplification is made by Ice Power. Now, let's talk a little bit about Ice Power. Someone said to me back in ISC, you know, Pulse 8, you've been making some of the best video matrices in the world for the last 10 years. What the hell do you guys know about audio? What makes you think you can do an amp? We don't. We're buying in the technology, to be completely honest with you. Ice Power, and that's the product we're looking at there. The little box in front is the amp. The bigger box behind is the bigger board behind, I'm sorry, is the power supply. Ice Power was a company that was founded from half a dozen Bang & Olufsen engineers who got a little bit upset with Bang & Olufsen and decided to do things differently. The Ice Power module, and I'm not going to name names, is available in a huge variety of CI and hi-fi products today. So let's look at the products that we're selecting from them. This amplifier is a high-powered Class D digital amplifier. It's, as I mentioned, 100 watts per channel at 4 ohms and 50 watts per channel, sorry, at 8 ohms. And the reason we've chosen it is its efficiencies. It's cold, it's quiet, it's stable. So it's cold, it doesn't need a fan. It doesn't have built-in fans, it's quiet. And stability is something that's really important. This amp is stable down to 2.4 ohms. So you can potentially, depending on your speaker choice, have 3 pairs of 8 ohm speakers running on each of these amps. Remember, there are 8 of them in our ProAmp 8. So you've certainly got the capability to supply a lot of rooms with a lot of speakers from one of our boxes. It's protected, thermal and overdrive protection. Of course, those of you who have ever built a rack will remember, put the hot stuff at the top, and the amps get hot, so we put them at the top, but it's also protected for overdrive. If your customer decides to be really stupid and drive every single zone at 100%, you're not going to hurt our amps. So let's talk about the power supply. Kind of a boring topic, but really important. We don't just plug it in and run it to our board like any other products. We have to use a dedicated power supply to supply all of that stability, all of that protection. It needs a dedicated, its own power supply. So this is a 400 volt power supply. This total handling of 1600 watts. And of course it's universal mains, 85 to 265. And it meets all of the European ERP standby consumption rules. As some of you may know, if you're as boring as I am, you'll know that most products manufactured today and sold in Europe have to produce a standby consumption of less than 1 watt, and we more than do that. So let's go back to our amp and look at the actual architecture of the amp. And from left to right, we'll look at the inputs first of all. Yes, we have an Ethernet for control, and all the rest of it, we'll talk about that later. But on the left-hand side, you'll see a digital input, and that's a coaxial or an optical. We'll talk about what that does shortly. We give you 8 analog stereo inputs on an RCA. We also give you 8 standard Phoenix outputs. Nothing new here, this is just a standard amplifier. We give you some 12-watt triggers. We do support Dolby, that's new. We don't often see that in multi-channel, multi-room amps, so we'll talk about that shortly. We give you that DSP stuff that I talked about in our preamps, that's in our ProAmp as well. If you're not even using our pre's, you can still benefit from our DSP and EQ stuff. From a control point of view, we give you native control from our own proprietary UI, or for those of our video customers out there who already know it, it's cloud monitoring. We will have the same functionality, albeit slightly limited because it's just an audio product, in our cloud monitoring. And of course, we'll give you that third-party control over 232 and IP from all of those control brands we keep talking about. And the real exciting thing about this product, before I tell you about what it does, is its availability. We debuted at February ISE. Despite everything, the amplifier and the UI are shipping the first week of May. That's next week. So let's look at the product. This is a conventional multi-zone mode. So for those of you who have never played with a power amp before, what goes into source 1 comes out of room 1. That is a tried and tested, everybody does it solution. There is no matrixing going on here. What goes into source 1 comes out of zone 1. Now, I'm using a Sonos port. I'm not completely anti-Sonos. Their new little source, their Sonos port preamp's pretty cool. Check it out. It's a obviously source connecting device, but has independent volume control. So you can take a whole bunch of those, throw them into our amplifier, and you're away. Now, this is not the most economical way of doing distributed audio by any stretch of the imagination. Those Sonos ports are like 350, 400 pounds, I believe. But this shows the theory of what we're doing. What goes into 1 comes out of 1, what goes into 2 comes out of 2, etc. Now, of course, that's not really that much of a practical scenario unless you just love the Sonos interface and you don't want to deviate from it and you're going to use their hardwired Ethernet products, go for your life. However, we take our product, our ProAudio, and combine it with the ProAmp to do some things slightly different. So we take our inputs, analog, digital, we don't care. We'll take whatever you give us in this product. We're using the 16 here as an example, 16 analog, 16 digital coaxial, or 16 optical. Remember, when those signals get into the box, we do the input adjustment on the DSP, we do the output adjustment on DSP, all the lip sync, room correction, subwoofer, all that good stuff gets done. From there, we run out of our preamplifier into our power amplifier and off to our zones. And because this is the 16, we're going to use 2 of our amps. You need more sources, you get a bigger preamp. You need more zones, you get more power amps. And it's just a question of the math. So that is a simple 16 zone, 2-channel example. Couple of key features, straight pass-through amp with a few changes. We talked about the IP control from third party. We give you independent right and left gain control. This is not to be confused with volume. We can put a pair of speakers in a room and adjust for distance on a stereo line. Don't often get that in a stereo amplifier. We give you that full muting I talked about earlier. We also give you bridge mode, which is real handy. If your client's got that pair of floor standing speakers they've had since college and they don't want to give them up, but they need that little bit more power than 100 watts of 4 ohms and 50 watts of 8 ohms, you can bridge 2 zones together to double the power you're delivering to those speakers. So that's the power amp in multi-room mode. Let's look at it in multi-channel. And I remember I talked about the Dolby audio input here. If we take a Dolby input signal from our preamp, and it could be down mixing from a satellite cable, Blu-ray, Fire Stick, whatever source you've got in there, and of course it down mixes from that, or up mixes depending on which way you're going, it takes that Dolby and bangs it straight into our amplifier. What then happens is we switch off inputs 1 through 3. Well, hold on a minute. Inputs 1 through 3, well, rooms 1 through 3, what happens to those? So because of our partnership with Dolby and some of the clever ways we do things, we reconfigure those 3 rooms to be 3 sets of channels. So zone 1 becomes right and left. Zone 2 becomes rear, right, rear, left. Zone 3 becomes center and subwoofer, creating a home theater zone. Pretty cool, I think. Of course, the keen-eyed amongst you will say, subwoofer, passive, who wants that? Some do, some don't. If you've got an in-wall, in-floor, in-ceiling sub that needs a passive feed, good to go. If not, we of course give you an active sub output as a pre. So that's now, for in all intents purposes, an AVR. We've done the video with all the stuff you learned about earlier in the week. This is now doing our audio. So we've got this home theater zone. Of course, we've now got some spare inputs. Inputs 4 through 8 are going free. So we take analog from our preamplifier. Happy days, we take our analog sources or even our multi-channel sources down mixed to analog, and we still supply those to rooms 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So what we've then created here is one box that's doing a 5.1 surround sound system, plus 5 rooms of potentially 100 watts per channel audio. We also give you the option here to bridge. So zone 3 left and zone 4 left, we can bridge that passive subwoofer to deliver twice the power. This is a game changer. So we also give you the RS-232 and Ethernet control. So let's look at the features. This is a 5.1, 3.1, or 2.1 amplifier. When you light up that digital input, those are your options. If you want Dolby Atmos 7.2.4 wonderful stuff, go talk to somebody else. We're not your guys yet. But for now, this is a simple multi-channel, multi-room product. So of course, we talked about the control. We have that independent gain volume control for each of those channels and zones. We also give you independent gain control for each channel in that 5.1 speaker zone. Anyone who's ever installed an AVR will know there's 2 options to set it up. You take the auto setup mic that came free in the box, you plug it in, you put the mic on the sofa, you press a button, and something like Odyssey or some other third-party piece of software will play a whole bunch of test tones for a few moments out of the speakers. Your mic will listen, your amp will just measure the distances. For those of you who may have attended some more advanced home theatre configuration classes, will be familiar with SPL, single sound pressure meter testing. So this is basically doing the same job as auto setup. We favour the second option. You will sit down on the couch with your SPL meter and you will independently adjust each speaker for its placement. We give you that zone bridging, so remember that famous pair of floor standards from college. If those are in your 5.1, no problem. We can still deliver twice the power to the front, left, and right when you guys have rocked up and sold a center, a couple of rears, and a subwoofer. We still give you that DSP functionality for left, right speakers, so we can still correct for room, we can still correct for input differences. And of course, we still give you that customer-friendly EQ and the same full muting. So let's look at the wiring, and before we do, let's just quickly remind ourselves of our multi-room solution. So this was all sources in, stereo out and away to all of our rooms. That's the conventional multi-room solution that our amp delivers. So if we look at the same set of equipment as a home theater, we can take the same products, no problem. Still connecting our digital and analog audio sources. We downmix our, we upmix our analog into digital, and we send a single optical cable into our amplifier, deactivate the inputs, and then off to our 5.1. At the same time, we can still take our stereo input outputs and run those into our spare zones to deliver zones 4 through 8. And again, because it's a ProAudio 16, we do the whole thing twice. So those 3 boxes there have given you 2 5.1 surround sound zones and 10 zones of audio. So we talked about all of what we do with audio. We want to integrate with video, of course. This is the name of the course, adding video to an audio world. And if you joined us earlier in the week, you'll be familiar with our Neo family. But just as a recap for those who haven't yet joined us, this is the new Neo 8A. This is a 8x10 video matrix. This is 4K, 4K at 40 meters, 1080p at 70 meters. It's over single Cat5e 6 or 7 cable, POH receivers included with the kit. This is a 420 video matrix. It gives us the 8 HDMI inputs, 8 HD-Base-T outputs, 2 HDMIs. It gives full control via CEC and all of the third-party stuff. But most importantly for our scenario, we also give you digital audio breakout. So if we look at that in our scenario now, we take the Neo 8A at the top, the new 8x10 video matrix, and we connect our video sources. This is 8 video sources. We de-embed that audio. We do not matrix that audio. What goes in one comes out of one. And for the benefits of ease of this diagram, we're just using an optical cable, but you could use the coax if you favor. So we're taking the 8 HDMI video feeds, we're de-embedding that audio, and we're sending it into our preamplifier. We're doing all of the clever DSP stuff we've talked about already today. And then we're going to send a digital audio connection into our power amplifier and away to a 5.1. At the same time, we're going to take some analog sources for those other input sources, and we're going to send those as analog sources into our amp for our other zones. Now, it's worth pointing out that our product has a Dolby downmix, the preamp. So those 8 video sources can all be downmixed to analog and be listened to in those 2 channel zones, just as easy as the 8 video sources that we talked about in the first place, as well as all of the additional inputs. And if we look at our Neo X or our Palladia GX for our friends across the pond, this is another product we talked about in great detail on Wednesday. Jonathan does a great job talking about our best-in-class matrix, but those of you who haven't heard about it already, let me give you a quick overview. This is the full-fat 4K 60 444 matrix at 100 meters, 1080p at 150 meters. It comes with the ultra-slim receivers, the POH, again over single Cat5e 6 or 7 cable. This is another 8x10 format matrix, but this also has audio return, audio matrixing and breakout, controllable via CEC, and all of the other control protocols we talked about. But the reason I'm using it in our example is this also gives us digital audio inputs. So if we look at the back of this product, instantly we lose our preamp. So if I take the same scenario we talked about, we've got 8 HDMI inputs, but also 4 digital audio inputs. Now we can do some simple DSP stuff in that, or we can do the DSP stuff in the power amp, doesn't really matter. But what we are doing is taking those 12 sources and outputting them digitally into our amp and away to our home theaters. At the same time, we'll take those digital video and digital audio sources, we'll downmix them to stereo and send them into our amplifier to our 2 channel zones. So now we've created a 12 source, 16 zone solution with 3 boxes from Pulse 8. Do the same again with the remaining 4 zones and away we go. In this scenario, I would have bridged that last set of amps just to give us double the power for those more important rooms. So what you've really done there, and we're not showing any of the video links, those are all, we've covered those earlier in the week. But what we've done here is we've taken 8 video sources and 4 audio sources, downmixed them, well, we've left them as digital for our home theater, but we've also downmixed them if we choose to analog for our 2 channel zones. Now, I could avoid connecting zone B, and I could have a second 5.1 on this scenario. So that gives you a bit of an idea and an overview of the power of our products. And to make things a little easier, we're kind of packaging them. The 2 packages you see in front of you are available when the amp launches next week. On the left-hand side is the first of our packages. We're calling it a killer combo. It's our ProAudio 16 and 2 amplifiers, available from us directly or through our distribution partners around the world. Really important, I'm not going to talk about pricing, but there's a huge saving if you buy them as a package. And in the middle there, we're doing our little video and audio. So we've got our Neo 8A 8x10 video matrix, the ProAudio 8 preamp and a power amp. Again, huge savings. Check out your distributors or our sales team for pricing.